Hey friends, welcome back to the Bald Booktuber. Hopefully you had a chance to check out my January wrap up. This is going to be our February reading plans. Obviously it's coming to you late because we're already a few days into February. Sorry about that. I'm trying to procrastinate a little bit less this year. We'll see how it goes. Um, I have planned about five or six books. If I get more than that, that's great. If I get at least that many, I'll be very happy. So I actually read the first book already, and I started it January 31st, and I finished it on February 1st. So obviously, it was a very quick read, and that was the first book in the Vorkosigan saga. Lois McMaster Bujold, an author I've wanted to get to for a long time. She is one of the queens of fantasy and sci-fi. This is a sci-fi space opera series that Christopher Rocchio adores, that Jim Butcher adores. Nobody can shut up about how great this series and this writer are. She's won multiple Hugos. She's fantastic. And I can see why everybody loves her. Her writing is wonderful. And got another 19 book or so series between novels and novellas that I guess is just going to be part of my life now. So we'll get more into that. But as far as the first book, really enjoyed learning about Cordelia, who I believe becomes kind of a secondary character. I don't really know. And the timeline of the series is a little weird. We'll talk more about that in a bit. But ultimately, I really enjoyed her romance with Orkosigan and really getting to see them kind of get together despite being on sort of opposite ends of an intergalactic war. So, really cool stuff. Really enjoyed a lot of the intrigue and espionage and different stuff that went down here. It's a 200-page book, and she got every little ounce out of it. So, that takes some pretty impressive skill. On a recent interview, Jim Butcher, the Dresden Files author, who's one of my favorite authors, said that he thinks that from a craft perspective, she's the best writer working today. So that is pretty high praise. And again, I can see why that is. I did it immersively, which is how I plan to do the whole series. Grover Gardner is the narrator. Not a favorite of mine, but he did a respectable job. So I'll keep it up with old Grover, and we'll go from there. What I started today is the second as of this filming. It'll probably drop in a day or two after this. I started Magician Master, which is book 2 of the Rift War cycle. So I talked about this in the other video, but I really like the first book. This one has started in a much darker tone, so I'm interested to see how that goes. We start with sort of Pug enslaved in that side of the rift, and there's some dark tone and dark themes in there. So I'm interested to see where this one takes me. Again, this is Nicholas Guy Smith is the narrator. I'm really enjoying what he's doing with the series. He seems to elevate it, so that is very good. Having a good time so far. I'm only 2 chapters in, but I plan to knock more of that out in the coming days. When I have wrapped up Magician Master, I will move on to book 2 in the Shadow March series. This is Tad Williams' Shadow Play, and I talked about this again on my January wrap up, but really, really had a wonderful time with that first book. If the remaining 3 books can touch the heights of that one, I'm in for a great time. Again, Dick Hill, the narrator, he does a fine job. Nothing super special. It would not have been my choice to narrate a series like this, but he does an admirable job with the material that he has. So yeah, really looking forward to that. Probably will start that around the weekend sometime, first weekend, full weekend in February, maybe a bit after that, but whenever I wrap up Magician Master, that will be the next read. So these other ones, I don't know necessarily what order I'll be reading them in, but these are kind of the other ones that I have planned out. The first one being Son of the Poison Rose by Jonathan Mayberry. This is book two in the Kagan the Damned series. I read Kagan the Damned, the first book, in December. That book is every possible trigger warning you could possibly have is in that book. Not for the faint of heart. And I would assume, based on who the character of this book is named after, which is his mother, I would assume it's going to go into some crazy darker even places than the first book. Maybe I'm wrong in that assumption. The only person I know that has continued with the series is Brent, my friend, and he loves both the second and third book as well. So, really excited for this. Ray Porter does the narration. He's one of my favorite narrators. He's so good in everything, and he is exceptional as he always is with this story. So really looking forward to this. Should be a quick read. The first one was for me. The action is just nonstop. I think the first one was around 400 or 500 pages. I think this one's probably similar. So shouldn't take me too long to devour that one. All right, I had the opportunity to request and get approved for an advanced reader copy, an ARC, of The Last Contract of Isako, which is a new novel by Fonda Lee. It drops in May, I believe. So I want to get this read and get a review up on NetGalley and Goodreads if I can. I don't know much about the story other than it is space samurais. That's about the extent of what I know. And that is certainly enough to get me intrigued and interested. She did Fantasy Godfather. I think she could probably do Space Samurais. So my wife and I actually had the opportunity to meet Fonda here a couple of years ago at Phoenix Comic Con. She's a wonderful person. I will be reading all of her books eventually. I really like the way she writes, and I like the way she interacts with the fandom. So those are two things that will score a lot of points with me. All right, and did I mention the name of the Vorkosigan Saga book? Shards of Honor was the name of the first book. I don't know if I mentioned it. Anyway, here's, I guess, a dilemma. So, if you watch my channel at all, you know my tagline is publication order always. I read stuff in publication order. I have been shamed into reading this series out of publication order because it is the author's preference to do so. There is a recommended reading order that I will be doing. Um, so I have the recommended reading order saved because it breaks my brain and it's hard for me to understand what happened here. But I've been told that book 7 is the second book I should read, not book 2, book 7. Apparently, Warrior's Apprentice, which is book 2, starts the Miles Vorkosigan saga tales. And all I hear about is how great Miles is. So I'm excited to start those. But I'm told that first I need to read Barry R, I think it's pronounced. I don't know how it's pronounced. That's book 7. And this is supposed to wrap up sort of a unofficial duology with Shards of Honor. So I read book 1, then 7, and then there's some other stuff, and then I eventually get to 2, and I it's all very confusing, and an old man has a hard time just remembering what's in these books, let alone what order to read them in. That's why I'm so adamant about publication order. That's not hard to memorize. This is hard to memorize, but I at least have the plan laid out. So I am looking forward to it. As I said, I really love Bujold's writing, so I'm looking forward to just chomping away at this series throughout the course of the year. Will I get all 20 books this year? I don't know. It may bleed into next year. I'm not sure. Or I may get a few books in and say I'm burnt out. That's enough of this. Who knows? But if the first book was any indication, this is something that I'm going to be spending some time with for a good long while. And I also want to read her fantasy trilogy that starts with Curse of the Chalian, and then Paladin of Souls, and then whatever the third one is titled. I don't remember. So we'll get there, but I'm going to prioritize Vorkosigan first, and hopefully it is something that's going to tide me over as a big series while I wait for the next Dresden Files book, which will likely be sometime next year, hopefully. But that's about it as far as what I have on the docket, the plans that I have to read. I'm excited about these reads. There's a decent chance that I will have extra time and I'll throw something else in there. Hard to say. So I'd love to hear what all of you are reading in the month of February. I hope you all have a wonderful Valentine's Day. For those of you that celebrate it, I hope you're as excited as me about pitchers and catchers reporting to spring training. Baseball season is almost upon us. So, as you know, huge Cubs fan, I'm very excited about the coming season. So, we will see how that goes as well. I'm probably going to be left disappointed. But again, the choices we make. So, other than that, I hope all is well. I hope all of you are reading good books. And until next time, publication order always, unless apparently you're reading Borkos again, my friends.